Hello everyone and welcome to 2024. This is my first video of the year and we're going to be talking about my most anticipated films of 2024. But before we get into that, I want to look back at my most anticipated list for 2023 and see what made my best movies of the year list, because I think that is really the point of a most anticipated list, is to look back at it after that year has passed and see what were the highlights, what were the disappointments, and what actually made my list by the end of the year. Alright, so just scrolling through this right now, it looks like I have 22 films here on this list, and right off the bat, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was my favorite film of 2023, along with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which was pretty close behind that. Barbie and Oppenheimer, I was very excited, as everybody was, for this double feature, and both of those films did make my best movies of the year list. Asteroid City also cracked that list, along with, that might be it, actually. I think it was just those. Oh no, John Wick Chapter 4 also cracked my list. So I think 6 films out of these 22 films ended up cracking my best movies of 2023 list, along with, there's a lot of disappointing ones on here. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I was very disappointed in. The Flash, a lot of people hated that movie. I thought it was okay. Same thing with the Marvels. But really, there was nothing on my list here that I absolutely despise. I was at least okay with most of them, except for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. That was the only one that I really didn't like. And of course, this being a most anticipated list, looking at the future of films, Dune Part 2 was on my list last year, and it's also going to be my list this year because I'm still extremely excited for Dune Part 2, but of course that one was delayed. And so let's just start off with that in terms of 2024, even though it's out of the order on my list. Dune Part 2, I'm so excited for this film. I think everybody who's a fan of that first movie is going to be excited for this, but if you're a fan of sci-fi and you haven't watched that first Dune movie, go ahead and watch it. It is a bit of a slower watch, and from what I've heard about this film and from the book fans, this one is really going to be the one where the action takes a step forward and the plot takes a step forward and really goes absolutely nuts. Next up on my list is going to be Shelby OAKS, which is directed and written by Chris Stuckman. And if you're watching this channel, you probably know who Chris Stuckman is, but if you don't, he is a movie reviewer on YouTube for the past 10 plus years, and I've really based my channel off of his in a lot of ways. He was the inspiration for me to make this channel in the first place, along with a couple others like Schmoes Know and Jeremy Johns and a few others on YouTube. Dan Merle also comes to mind in recent years, but Chris Stuckman is really who I've strived to be in terms of how he analyzes films, and as a filmmaker himself now, I want to be a filmmaker. I want to go down the path that he went down to, and Shelby OAKS is going to be his first feature debut, and I cannot wait to watch it because I know he knows horror, he loves horror, and I hope this is going to be good. Drive Away Dolls is also on my most anticipated list. This one is directed by Ethan Coen, and I love the Coen brothers. I love a lot of their movies, and honestly, I haven't seen nearly enough of them, but Fargo is one of my favorite films and one of my favorite shows of all time, and this one kind of has that tone and feel of Fargo that I hope that Ethan Coen is going to be able to recapture in this film. I love the cast. It just looks like a lot of fun, and I'm excited for it. Mickey 17. I know absolutely nothing about this movie besides this image that I'm showing you here. I know it stars Robert Pattinson. It is directed by Bong Joon-ho, his first film since Parasite, and I mean, come on. It's the follow-up to the Best Picture winner from a few years ago, and it's Bong Joon-ho as the director who's made countless amazing films, and Robert Pattinson being the star of this film, sign me up. I cannot wait to see what this movie is about. Next up is going to be a weird one. This one is called Civil War, directed by Alex Garland, and Alex Garland is a controversial filmmaker just right off the bat. Ex Machina is a highly regarded film. It was up for a few Oscars the year that film came out, and I love that movie. It's one of my favorite sci-fi concepts to hit the big screen, and he's done a lot of great stuff with his sci-fi films. I loved Annihilation. I liked Men. I really need to watch that again, but that was for sure a weird and controversial one in terms of his filmography. And now he's tackling a movie called Civil War, not about the Civil War that the United States had, back in the day, but about a future one that is potentially down the line. This movie may not be marketed directly as a horror film, but this film looks absolutely terrifying, and I think it has the chance to either piss everybody off or piss half the people off and piss the other half of the people off. I don't know. This movie's going to be extremely divisive, and I think that in general is what makes me really want to watch this film because it looks good. Jesse Plemons looks phenomenal in the film, and it's an election year, so fuck it, why not? Alright, let's take a step back and a little more lighthearted with If, Imaginary Friends from John Krasinski. I don't know, this one looks a lot of fun. I was excited for the concept and the idea of this movie. I think John Krasinski said in a podcast that this was kind of a story that he told to his children growing up, and so he wanted to make it into an actual film for them to actually watch, and because he is a great filmmaker who made A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place Part 2, I'm excited to see what he does with a completely different genre from those other films, this more being a lighthearted, children-oriented comedy that's, makes sense for John Krasinski in terms of a director, even more so than a horror. So I'm hoping it's good. I think it has a chance of just being okay based on that trailer, which I wasn't crazy about, but I don't know. I'm still looking forward to it. Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes is probably my most anticipated franchise return of the past 5 years. I love the Planet of the Apes movies that were directed by Rupert Wyatt, I believe, who did the first one, and then Matt Reeves, who did the follow-ups for that film, and that trilogy in general, that Planet of the Apes trilogy with Andy Serkis playing Caesar is one of the best trilogies of all time. I love each of those movies for very different reasons because they all kind of have their own tone and feel to them, but they are all extremely good. And so to return to this world is very exciting. And I'm actually excited for Wes Ball to take over as director of this because in terms of trilogies, I think he was one of the few directors that actually made a full trilogy on his own with the Maze Runner trilogy. He directed all 3 of those films, and say what you will about some of them, I actually really like the trilogy as a whole. The second film, in terms of its convoluted nature, is a little bit lower on that list, and same thing with the third one. It is extremely convoluted, but the one thing you can't deny is that they were all directed with fairly strong confidence, and the action sequences within those were all great, so I'm excited to see what he can do with this series. Alright, Furiosa, a Mad Max story. I love Mad Max Fury Road. I've not seen any of the other Mad Max films, and maybe I'll make it a point to watch all of the films in anticipation for this film, but in terms of Mad Max Fury Road, that's one of the greatest action films of all time, and the trailer for Furiosa looks absolutely phenomenal. I cannot wait for this film to be back in this world, and if it has even half the excitement and energy that Fury Road had, we're in for a damn good movie. Ballerina is the next film in the John Wick universe, and this movie I am fairly excited for. I love John Wick Chapter 4. I think that film, obviously it made my best movies of the year list for this past year. I love the world of John Wick. This one taking place in between, I believe, 3 and 4, maybe takes place between 2 and 3. I do believe that's Keanu Reeves will be playing John Wick again in this film, which is exciting to see. But Ana de Armas is the reason why I'm excited for this film. She was, of course, in No Time to Die as a really, really fun and entertaining spy in that film that I wish that the 007 franchise would go in the direction of making a film about her and Lashana Lynch's character in that film, but I think they're just going to recast James Bond and kind of do their own thing that they normally do with the James Bond series. But I want to see a movie starring that character, and hell, if it's in the John Wick universe instead, I'm down for that. If she has the same sort of energy and kind of the comedy that she played in that film, as well as the badass nature of her character, I'm excited to see what she can do in the John Wick universe in the first spin-off from the series besides that show, which I did not watch. If there's a Pixar movie coming out in any given year, I am going to be excited for it. Elemental was on my list for this past year. I liked Elemental quite a bit, but when you have a sequel to one of my favorite films in the entire Pixar universe, I'm going to be extremely excited for Inside Out 2. I loved Inside Out. Like I said, it's one of my favorites. I believe I have a Pixar list on my Letterboxd as well for you to look at, but it's one of my favorite Pixar films, and a sequel to that I think just makes sense. Adding some more emotions just makes sense for Inside Out, and I think if they can execute it well, I think it could be a very fun time at the movies, and maybe it will be just as impactful and just as heartwarming as a story as the first Inside Out was, because that movie does genuinely bring me to tears every single time I watch it. Not just the Bing Bong stuff, but the stuff at the end with Riley going back to her parents and hugging them and finally shedding that tear. It just does so well with the emotions in that film, which, I mean, that's kind of the point of the entire film, so I'm hoping this one's good. And I mentioned A Quiet Place when it comes to John Krasinski. This one's sadly not directed by John Krasinski, but it is a spin-off in the same universe as the first day of this apocalypse that happened in this world, and we got to see a glimpse of that in A Quiet Place Part 2, which was absolutely exhilarating. But to kind of set an entire movie in that time period with Lupita Nyong'o being the star of that film, who is phenomenal in Us and Little Monsters. I don't think a lot of people have seen Little Monsters, but I'm excited to see what she can do in this world. In a world where there's only one MCU film being released in the calendar year of 2024, of course that film is going to make my list, but even more so because it is Deadpool 3. And I think my reasoning behind that is the same reason why Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was on my list. Because yes, I know a lot of people are kind of soured on the MCU at this point, but this film doesn't have the baggage of the MCU on its shoulders in the same way that James Gunn didn't have the baggage of the MCU on his shoulders, because he was capping off his own trilogy. This Deadpool film seems to be firmly as a sequel to the previous 2 Deadpool films that are completely in a separate universe than what we've seen in the MCU, so it is disconnected in that sort of way, but it's also going to have a multiversal fun traveling way that does fit into the themes that they're trying to establish in the MCU at this point in time. And hopefully it can kind of weave these two worlds together in a fun and interesting way. And I love the Deadpool movies. I think they can have a lot of fun, and having, Hugh Jackman in that yellow suit, in that costume for this Deadpool movie seems to be a lot of fun. And I'm honestly just more excited for the marketing for this film, because I know they're going to throw some jabs at the MCU and at Marvel and at Disney in particular. And I've been saying it for years. This movie needs to start with the classic Disney logo castle just at the very beginning of the movie, and Deadpool like interrupting it or doing something funny during that, intro. I don't know. I think they should do something fun. Just fully embracing the fact that Deadpool is now a Disney movie. Did you guys know Fede Alvarez is directing an Alien movie? That is so exciting. I cannot wait for another Alien film in theaters. And Fede Alvarez is a very intense filmmaker with films like Don't Breathe and the Evil Dead remake. He is a great filmmaker, and I cannot wait to see what he can do in the Alien franchise. I honestly don't really know much about this film. I think it takes place between Alien 1 and 2, and I know Kaylee Spaney is going to be the star of this film. But besides that, I think the plot is firmly under wraps at this point. And so, I don't know. There's not much to go off of with this besides my extreme fandom for the Alien franchise. And I know they're also working on a show from the filmmaker behind Legion and Fargo with Noah Hawley, and I think that guy's an extremely good showrunner as well. So if we're going to have an Alien TV series, whether it's next year or 2025, and we have Alien Romulus coming out this year with Fede Alvarez behind the camera, it's a great time to be an Alien fan. And I'm glad that with the Disney merger with 20th Century Fox, that they didn't abandon the Alien franchise, and they're embracing it, and they're going to be releasing a show on Hulu and a movie in theaters. I cannot wait for whatever this film turns out to be. And same as Marvel, DC is pretty much, non-existent in this calendar year of 2024 before we gear up to the whole James Gunn reboot. And so the only film that we have of note, at least that I can think of for 2024, is going to be Joker Folie à Deux, which is the sequel to Joker starring Joaquin Phoenix. Lady Gaga is going to be playing Harley Quinn. It's going to be a musical. This movie is probably going to be absolutely insane and unhinged. I am a fan of that Joker film that came out a few years ago. I'm excited to see what they do with this. And I think what gives me most confidence about this film, a lot of people said Joker was just, king of comedy, or it was just a Scorsese movie, but with Joker, a coating of paint on it to make it Joker instead of like Taxi Driver or something else like that. But this film, it's, being a musical, a weird trippy thing, Folie à Deux means delusion shared by two, which makes sense for a Joker and Harley Quinn storyline. And so it feels like, if anything else, this movie is going to be different from that first film and different from anything else that we've seen before. So if it can be more original than that first film, but still have the great performances and the great story that the first one also had, I'm excited to see what this one will turn out to be, because I think this one is an extreme wild card. Terrifier 3 is also right around the corner for next Halloween, and this is probably the only horror movie on this list besides Alien Romulus and I guess A Quiet Place Day 1. I'm a horror fan, what can I say? And, Terrifier 2, I absolutely love that film, and it's my best performing video on this channel, which I absolutely love that film, and I'm glad that the movie, got the exposure that it did. And so with Terrifier 3, even upping the budgets even more so this time around, and, I think that the filmmakers behind this series know exactly what they're doing with it, and I hope they can cap this trilogy off in a very entertaining way, because these movies are absolutely bloody and gory and disgusting, but also really fun and entertaining in a way that just works for the Terrifier franchise, which not a lot of films can pull this off and still feel fun, despite how messed up and disturbing it can be in a lot of ways. And so this one is definitely on my list for next year. And finally, we have Nosferatu, which is directed by Robert Eggers, for his next film. And this film is so exciting. I absolutely love the cast of this film. Willem Dafoe being in this movie. You also have Bill Skarsgård, Lily Rose Depp, and Nicholas Hoult rounding out the cast. And it's a Robert Eggers film, and it's a vampire Nosferatu remake. And this is just exciting, because I think that his style and his tone very much warrants a Nosferatu remake. He kind of fits that world quite a bit, and I'm excited to see a remake of this film that could potentially be really good. And if anything else, it's going to get me to watch the original, to get me to watch some of the other remakes, and to get me to watch the other vampire film that was based on the making of Nosferatu that Willem Dafoe is playing, where he's playing the same character that he was playing the actor for in that film, which is just a really trippy thing to just, that's a weird like trivia fact that you can have about this movie that is just really cool. And so I don't know, Christmas Day, I need to watch a Dracula movie. That sounds exciting to me. But that's going to be my most anticipated films for 2024. There's a few movies that I'm sure I haven't even heard of yet that'll probably be, by the end of the year on my best movies of 2024 list. And who knows, maybe a lot of these films will be not good and be disappointing in a lot of ways and not make my list by the end of the year. But hopefully, Alien Romulus will make it. I'm very nervous for that movie, but also very excited. And Maxine is another film that I didn't mention on this list because I forgot about it before I made the list, but it's fine. It's going to be a great year, hopefully, for film, and I'm very excited to talk about all these movies and more on this channel. So if you did enjoy this review, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment down below your most anticipated films of 2024. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you for watching this video. Like I said, subscribe, leave a like, comment down below, and I hope to see you all in my next one.